Hey guys, nice to meet you. My name is Robert Breedlove. I am the CEO and founder of Parallax Digital. We're a multi-strategy crypto asset hedge fund, and I've been in Bitcoin lightly for about 6 years, but pretty heavily for about three and a half. I first got into Bitcoin in 2014. I was actually on vacation with a friend of mine who's a banker. We were in Costa Rica and we were having an argument, and his thesis was that Bitcoin and digital currencies would absolutely never work. They had no chance. And my thesis was counter to that, thinking that Bitcoin or digital currencies were 100% going to be disruptive to banking and everything as we understand it. But at the time, I was kind of operating under the false assumption that Bitcoin was like version 1 of digital money, and that by version 50, say, that would be the thing that really outcompeted banks and whatnot. So I kick myself all the time about hearing about Bitcoin, having an argument in Costa Rica, actually, what I thought was winning the argument, making really good points, but not putting my money where my mouth was and investing more heavily. So fast forward to like 2016, early 17, I discovered the concept of smart contracts, which is something that this really prolific author named Nick Szabo wrote about. And I discovered it actually through Ethereum, which a lot of their marketing at the time was being focused on smart contracts. So I started to kind of go down that rabbit hole, and I had this light bulb moment where basically a smart contract is a piece of software that automates relationships between transacting parties. So you can put contract clauses into this piece of software along with money, and then as the clauses are met, the money is released. So it kind of automates commercial interaction. And my light bulb moment was that this technology was going to be super disruptive to finance, because basically I came to see finance as one giant intermediate function. So it was just connecting buyers and sellers, and that basically the whole industry of finance could be, in theory, disrupted by a smart contract. So that's when I had the light bulb moment. I started making heavy investments into the space, and where my money went, my mind followed. I started to study everything much more closely, and in doing so, discovered, really the fundamentals of Bitcoin. What makes it the most superior monetary technology that's ever existed in the world. And prior to that, like my background before getting into Bitcoin and launching our own company was I have my master's degree in accounting and finance. I studied at Tennessee. I was a certified public accountant for a number of years, and then I was a CFO for a number of tech companies, mostly focused in distributed software, so like healthcare, SaaS, did some hospitality SaaS, stuff like that. So I've always been a nerd. I mean, I've been an avid reader my whole life, always been into tech, very keenly interested where sort of technology meets finance, meets commerce, and how it's changing the world. And I feel really fortunate to be working in Bitcoin because it really is kind of the nexus of all of that. It connects all the dots. If you really think about it, money, it touches everything. And the fact that Bitcoin is disruptive to our concept of money, it just makes it a really exciting space to work in. So I consider myself to be a Bitcoiner mainly because I consider myself, if I have to put a word to it or a title, I say that I'm a freedom maximalist. And what I mean by this is that I truly believe that by each of us being able to lead a life in alignment with our own truth and to trade with one another, that's how we create the best outcomes in the world. And this is sort of like what the United States is founded on. Like, it's founded upon the concept of free market capitalism, which simply means, capitalism's got a bad rap, but all it means, in essence, is that the individual gets to own their own time. So however I spend my time, whatever I spend my time doing or producing, I am free to control the fruits of my labor and trade them with other people that do the same thing, that spend their time pursuing their truth, creating their own fruits of labor that we can all trade with each other. and that the net outcome of that process is innovation and wealth creation and all these things that we benefit from in the modern age. So I really believe that, philosophically, maximizing freedom is the right thing. It's like how people actually find their true happiness, like what makes them happy inside, and it creates the best outcome between people because we're creating innovations. We're trading our way towards prosperity basically as a result of that. So in that context, I think, most regulations and especially monopolies, like anytime, as you may have learned in Econ 101, it's like the market is wherever supply and demand meets. That's what the market referees everything. But when you put an institution in there that disrupts like the natural functioning of supply and demand, it just creates bad outcomes. So, monopolies, typically they become violent or deceptive. They actually impose their power on other people to kind of confiscate the fruits of their labor. And that's what a central bank is. A central bank is a monopoly on money, and it's really bad for society. It's really bad for people. I've written a lot about it. I actually think it corrupts the moral fabric of who we are. So I really do think it's a big deal. In that sense, Bitcoin represents this movement where just by holding Bitcoin, you're participating in this peaceful protest, saying that you don't believe that state monopolized money is the right answer for humanity. And a lot of people call this movement the separation of money and state, kind of equating it to the separation of church and state. And I think that's a pretty apt title. So, at its root, fiat currency, the money we all use today, it's basically a living lie. It was originally a paper certificate redeemable for gold, which was real money that the market selected as money. And over time, governments just revoked that redeemability. So it went from literally being a token for gold to being just tokenized government debt. So it's just an unfulfilled promise. So it's really bad. Like our money system today is it's a pure lie. And so to look at Bitcoin, like what is Bitcoin? People are always trying to ask this question. And I like to say Bitcoin it's just honest money. Like you can see every element of Bitcoin. It's 100% inspectable. It's universally transparent. It has a fixed and known supply forever that no one can corrupt to benefit themselves at the expense of anyone else. It just resolves all the problems with the deceptiveness of government money. So I like to call it honest money. And maybe even in a more profound or philosophical sense, I like to think of Bitcoin as digital virtue. Virtue is defined as anything that's good or useful or of a moral truth. And, because, Bitcoin is honest, that makes it good and it makes it useful. It's like the American pragmatist said that truth is the end of all inquiry. So if you can have something that just stands up to inquiry for the longest period of time, like that basically is the truth. And that's essentially what Bitcoin is. Like everyone can inquire as to what are the rules, who gets to make them, where is the Bitcoin, how does it move? It's fully transparent and honest. And so I think in that sense, Bitcoin too is super useful to protect ourselves from government overreach. And it's a moral truth because Bitcoin maximizes two fundamental Christian precepts. And these are not, I think they're in other religions as well, but I'm familiar with Judeo-Christian background, so I like to focus on those. But which are really just very simply to tell the truth and to honor the sovereignty of the individual. So never treat someone like they're a foregone conclusion, right? Everyone has their own freedom, right? And if we honor that freedom in one another, I think we get the best results. Like if you tell someone, oh, you're just going to do that, like they get mad because you're like, you don't know me. I can do whatever I want. I'm a free person. And then, on the other side is like people that lie. Like if you don't tell the truth, that just, it messes up life. It just corrupts society. It corrupts social life. So I think, Bitcoin gets us away from this money that's built on lies to something that's built on a firmer foundation, something more like these Christian precepts of telling the truth and honoring the sovereignty of the individual. And I think that truth that it gets us back to is that each of us are sovereign. Each of us have the authority to act as we see fit, not the governments that we live under. Like today, people call governments sovereign, but I don't think that's correct. I think we're free people in a free world, and Bitcoin sort of charts our path back towards that truth.